32 in Oakland, 9:32 here in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. Whew. And I happened to see on Twitter a reference to a Wall Street Journal piece on Howard Terminal, which is behind a paywall. And while I'm talking about this, anyway, as I was saying, good morning. Coffee is brewing. Can't wait to have some. All right, here's some information you're not going to get in the Wall Street Journal piece that you're being asked to pay to read behind a paywall. And what is the main problem with why Howard Terminal is still in a position where key approvals from the city council have not been done and ground has not been broken for something that originally was supposed to have been finished by 2025? Well, I will tell you. The problem is this. The city, by its own admission, by the admission of the mayor, forgot how to do redevelopment, and yet the legislation that was designed to get financing to it, SB 293 Skinner, called for tax increment financing. But doing the legislation and implementing it are two different worlds for today's Oakland. Yesterday's Oakland, which was an expert at tax increment financing, could do it. Now you would say, what's tax increment financing? Okay. Tax increment financing simply takes property tax revenue in an area, a pre-described area within a city, in this case Oakland, and it says, all right, that money that property owners normally spend in taxes will go to what's called a public financing agency, or they call it district board in the legislation, and that public financing authority, as it's actually supposed to be called in enhanced industrial development legislation parlance, would then be collected by the agency, by the authority, and used to float a bond issue to accomplish the objective of doing all that is necessary to build a project or projects. In this instance, the ballpark district. Part of that is also affordable housing. Now, you would say, how did we get to a point where the Athletics were pushing this kind of public financing? Well, originally Oakland Athletics president Dave Cavall had no idea at all that public financing could be done. He said it has to be entirely private. It's not, he said, because he was under the impression that tax increment financing wasn't available. He was under the impression that redevelopment was dead. On the 4th of April, 2017, he was introduced to facts pointing in the opposite direction. He was told that SB 628 Beal, signed into law by Governor Jerry Brown in 2015, was the son of redevelopment. We had lost redevelopment because Jerry Brown got rid of it. Spent a great deal of time doing it in 2011. That's another story. Anyway, he realized he made a mistake and created or allowed the creation of, signed into law, SB 628 Beal, which allows the use of tax increment financing for industrial infrastructure projects, economic development related, of course. Now, on the day, the April 4th, 2017 day, Dave Cavall found out. He found out because he talked to me. He and I met at his introductory meeting and his press conference at the Coliseum. Our conversation was a get to know you, it wasn't an interview. And I told him that such an option was available. Then I sent to him a copy of the legislation, and he didn't even know about the study that the Gruins had prepared. You say, who are the Gruins? The Gruins are a local and Bay Area local economic development consultancy, husband and wife team. Nice people. Claude and Nina Gruen. Go back a long way. Anyway, the study that the Gruins wrote in 2010 was about building a ballpark for the Let's Go Oakland group in Jack London Square. It had calculations using tax increment financing to determine how much subsidy would be available from tax increment revenue. Dave didn't even know that study existed. I sent it to him after our phone call. And I then embarked on building a spreadsheet. I told him he was going to need tax increment financing because he was going to have to build affordable housing at Howard Terminal or anywhere. At the time we were talking, they hadn't really settled on Howard Terminal. It was going to be either the Coliseum or Howard Terminal. The mayor had given him the A's an option, and of course the A's decided to split the difference and say, we'll take both. We'll take both. They took both. And so anyway, I forgot to get a spoon. They then proceeded to work with California State Senator and staff Nancy Skinner, and also our now great Attorney General Rob Bonta, who was Assembly Member Rob Bonta then, to craft two pieces of legislation. One, essentially a streamlining legislation that allowed a fast track toward approval for the environmental impact study, and the other, SB 293 Skinner, to authorize the use of tax increment financing in a way specially designed for Howard Terminal, and in such a way that, this is the big deal that a lot of people don't know and is not in the Wall Street Journal piece. And look, I didn't read the piece, but I know it's not there. Okay, I know it's not there. That the subsidy from Howard Terminal, part of it, could be used for what are called community projects of community-wide benefit. And what's community-wide benefit? Well, pretty much any project the Public Financing Authority deems of community-wide importance, which could include any project in East Oakland, okay? Which can include any project in East Oakland. But what happened was very simple. When you establish legislation, and the city council did approve what was done at the state level, that after that October 11, 2019, you're saying we're going to use tax increment financing, your first job is to contact the county and all the other taxing agencies. Who are the taxing agencies? BART, AC Transit, the school district. Even though you can't use school district money, there are other ways you can work with the school district. You need their taxing agency, you need to contact them. And at any rate, the taxing agencies are the County of Alameda, BART, AC Transit, the EB Mud Flood Control District, and the school district, okay? And the city of Oakland itself. So all the property tax that normally go to those entities comes to the project, Public Financing Authority, as it's called, or the district board, as it's called in SB 293 Skinner parlance, and it's collected for use to retire a bond issue that is expected to be floated. But that bond issue calls for something referred to as an infrastructure financing plan. My point is, this process was laid out in the legislation. The city did not follow it. You hear me? The doggone thing was signed into law October 11th, 2019. The city went through 2020, did not contact the county of Alameda, say, hey, you know what, we're going to use tax increment financing. We need to meet so that we can establish the infrastructure financing plan. And we need to form that plan, right? We need to get the boundary approved for what Howard Terminal is if it's going to be Howard Terminal, or is Howard Terminal is going to be, or the Coliseum. There was no effort. They had no project manager. Molly Mayburn wasn't hired until late 2019 for the project. But Molly's specialty is not redevelopment. She doesn't know tax increment financing. And the previous person responsible for it didn't either within the city administrative office. So what I'm spelling out to you is basically a city organization that, by the mayor's own admission to me in a press conference interview, forgot how to do redevelopment. And so, and she certainly didn't call me and say, hey, I hear you talked to Dave Cavall, or I read that you talked to him, because I put it out there publicly that we talked, and that I'm the person who introduced the idea of using tax increment financing to the athletics. And you'll say, why me? Because my first job out of grad school was with the Oakland Redevelopment Agency going back into 1987. And I have spent now 30 plus years doing tax increment financing calculations. In some cases as a consultant, in other cases just for my publication, in some cases just for fun. If you don't know how to use a tax increment financing, or do tax increment financing revenue estimates, what you wind up doing are errors like, for example, Molly Mayburn did once, saying that, well, it's a present value calculation. It's not, okay? Because, and I'm not going to go off on a tangent here, I'll just say it has two independent variables rather than one, the formula. Anyway, the city did not meet with the county to get approval until after the 27th of March of 2021. What happened then? Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred said, hey, Oakland's taking too long with this. We're going to start looking at other cities like Portland and Las Vegas. Then the mayor got religion and said, we better do something. Okay. That's what happened. And so, and that's put us way behind the 8 ball. That's where, in other words, what the mayor did was basically the same thing that the NFL criticized the mayor for doing in the Raiders case and in Oakland before Libby, okay? Because, Libby the problem with why the Raiders didn't get their stadium goes back to as far back as Gene Kwan and Coliseum City. But then it continued through, the mismanagement continued through Libby, because the person who could have got us out of this, Fred Blackwell, left the city of Oakland in 2013 and went to become CEO of the San Francisco Foundation. So we had a gigantic brain drain there. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that the mayor of Oakland now, Libby, and her staff were accused, and Oakland has been accused of reacting. Eric Grubman, who is the NFL's senior vice president for business ventures and stadium point person that engineered the move to Las Vegas and the NFL's move to controversial move from St. Louis to LA, said, and this is on my video repeatedly, that Oakland is reacting as opposed to actually working to build a stadium. And it's the same with the case of Howard Terminal. Even though the athletics, because the athletics has steered this, and because Oakland has been in a consistent place of reacting, it has led to a place where the athletics has spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million on staffing costs paid to the city. And even though they they didn't understand tax increment financing and a number of other I- issues, the athletics drove what city staff did and basically governed what the city did because they were paying for it and the mayor allowed them to. Because we as a city didn't have people who actually knew what they were doing. And if anybody denies it, all I have to do is pull up the mayor of Oakland's current statements to me when she made them in 2021. I love Libby. Libby's my god sister. But in this, the idea that you look on your friends, get your friends to help, she didn't do that. And, I'm not any Joe Blow. I'm the only person in sports history to have actually formed the bid to bring the Super Bowl to Oakland. We lost to Jacksonville. And if you think that's something easy, you have no idea what you're talking about. But I digress. The reason why we are where we are today is because Oakland forgot how to do big projects with respect to tax increment financing. And so getting the money out of the way was the big problem. The problem that is also related to that is Oakland did not build a process. Let's take the Raiders example in the case of Las Vegas. Now former Nevada Governor Brian Sandoval created the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee to form what became the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Act. That was a deliberative body within which the framework for something called the Las Vegas Stadium Authority was created. And that Stadium Authority started meeting way back in 2016. And you can now go to lvstadiumauthority.com and you can see the history. They took out some of the 2015 part, but you can see the history by all the meetings, agenda items, what was done, reports, progress on the stadium. It's all laid out there. My point is that you could track the progress of the stadium, but also it helped to focus stadium work because you had a number of flanks of documents that had to be created, and then the board had to approve their creation. By contrast, Oakland has no such body. It could have if it simply went ahead and by SB 293 Skinner established a public financing authority, or as I call it, a district board. They should have called it a public financing authority. They didn't do it. And someone was saying, well, there's not enough seats for the county or this. You can change seats. You can add seats. That's a minor issue. But see, in Oakland, we have a tendency to make minor issues big issues, and we use those minor issues to stop us from getting things done. We use those minor issues, we make them major to stop us from getting things done because psychologically, I believe we have a collective fear of public-private success. The construction you see going on in Oakland, well-moneyed white developers building market rate housing and office space, taking advantage of the fact that the once gigantic wall blocking institutional investors from putting money in Oakland was taken down when Jerry Brown became mayor. That's what happened. Jerry Brown made it okay for money white folks to live in Oakland. He made it cool. That was Jerry Brown's contribution to Oakland. And prior to that, we were under the constant bugaboo of disinvestment because we were, as the United Colors of Benetton once wrote to me as economic advisor to Oakland Mayor Elihu Harris in a letter, and also to Phil Tagami, who shared the letter with me well, his copy of it. I got the other copy. He called me about it. I'll never forget the call. It was 1997. But at any rate, the United Colors of Benetton said that Oakland didn't have the right demographics. Okay, meaning we were too black for them. I'll never forget that. Well, anyway, Jerry helped to bring in more of a moneyed class. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need people with money to make your city go, who want to spend it in your city. And you have to give them a reason to spend it, right? So back to what happened with Howard Terminal. Again, that is what happened. It's not any more complicated than the city not having its act together and not establishing something it can still do now, a deliberative body, a public financing authority to really focus all the work, all of the documents that need to be created, the funds that need to be developed for the project. None of that's there. So by comparison with how stadiums and arenas are done in other parts of the country, this is a piecemeal process. It's piecemeal. Now, I'm not saying it can't get done this way, but if you want to understand what the problem is and trying to get it done this way, you're looking at it. The proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. And it's over politicized. Other people don't agree with me when I say this, but the worst thing that happened to Oakland's ability, once vaunted ability, to use tax increment financing to build great public-private partnership structures, like, for example, the original Oakland Convention Center, which is too small, or the development and operation of the Port of Oakland. All of that started when we had a council manager form of government. But I challenge you to show me one major project the city of Oakland has completed, it's public-private, since strong mayor. I'll bet you the projects that you can think of and name were established before strong mayor was voted in late 1998 as Measure X. Elihu my boss wanted a strong mayor too, of a different sort. But what's happened in Oakland, and the reason why, in my opinion, it doesn't work, is because these development projects, which are already highly politicized in the past, became more politicized. And at the time that we have activists in government, not business leaders or business entrepreneurs, we have people who don't understand what it means to start a process, an organizational process to get something done. So therefore, they don't know how to call for it from the city administration. So the city administration winds up reflecting what they don't know. And that's where we're at. Because what happens is if you get someone who does know, and you're the elected official, you're the mayor, and you're not popular, and you're termed out, your people are going to start looking for jobs elsewhere. And I know that's what's happened in the case of the city of Oakland. It's difficult, very difficult, if not arguably impossible. Well, I won't go that far, but it's very difficult to complete long-range projects when you have this incredible volatility at the top. And that's the problem we're facing. So we have a Howard Terminal that is quite literally bleeding into the mayoral election this year. What the Athletics didn't want to have happen has happened. It has become Howard Terminal a political football. And now, Oakland Councilmember Carol Fife has said, although I don't believe this is going to happen, that she wants a public vote on Howard Terminal, which, in my humble opinion, is ridiculous. because it says that we didn't explain Howard Terminal well enough to elected officials for them to understand it. Instead, what happened, the mayor didn't, which gets to the other problem. And what happened was that we're at a place where they don't understand it, so it becomes this political football. You got Noel Giles saying, gee, I want it at the Coliseum. Why does it have to be at Howard Terminal? I remember Oakland Councilman Larry Reed would always say to me, that's your sister's project, my god sister. That's your god sister project, okay? And in other words, he's District 7 council member. He didn't want to take any ownership except he was available to her when she called on him, which wasn't as often as he would have liked. All right? And he also would have loved to simply have seen the A's build at the Coliseum, but the A's didn't want to. And the reason why they didn't want to is because for a long time, this goes all the way back to when what we used to call Pac Bell Park was opened and finished by the San Francisco Giants. Beautiful facility now called Oracle Park, okay? With McCovey Cove and then when they had the great slugger Barry Bonds routinely hitting home runs into the drink, into McCovey Cove. Well, A's fans wanted that. And if you take a look from McCovey Cove or from the stands at Oracle Park, you can see right over it at Howard Terminal. So basically, A's fans wanted their own stadium to be able to go and that sort of thing, all right? But also, from a more practical standpoint, those locations bring high-level visibility to corporate sponsors. Look at Chase Center and how the Warriors are milking the NBA Finals opportunity to get Chase all the exposure it could possibly want for the $400 million it's spent to put its name on that arena for the Warriors at Mission Bay. The reason why we don't see Oakland, in my opinion, I haven't had this confirmed by the Warriors. I don't know if they confirmed my question in this way if I posed it, but the reason why we don't see Oakland at all is because Chase and the Warriors weighed in and said, you know what? We spent multi-million dollars. We don't care. Oakland's in the past. This is our present. Show Chase as often as possible because that's exactly what's happening. All right? Did Oakland lose out? Yeah, big time. Big time. We have lost the ability to say to anybody, hey, look at us on national television, and don't be a fool and try and discount the power of television. Cities hosting sports events on television are great marketing tools. They drive tourism, which drives economic development. Oakland's visibility has decreased, according to my analysis of Google Trends data, by 50% since both the Warriors and the Raiders left Oakland for San Francisco and Las Vegas. That's a ton. That's a ton, all right? Oakland has quite literally become less relevant by a lot. And it's going to take a lot of money to get it back. The worst part of this whole story at this point is that Oakland has done nothing to try to improve this situation. There's no sports commission. There's no focused body to say we need, like, for example, what Governor Sandoval did with the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee. We need a focused effort to rebuild our public-private partnership in Oakland and get large-scale events in here. But what we have is we have people like Councilmember Fife saying, well, we don't have time for sports. Well, Councilmember Fife doesn't get it. It's not about sports. It's about gatherings of large people that then drive economic development. And if you say, well, sports don't bring economic development to the city, I would say, first of all, you're you really take a look at the numbers and know which numbers you're reading. People who turn economists to do the analysis, first of all, turn economists don't understand urban economics, because cities produce economic value by how often they're mentioned on television, on the internet, not just by businesses locating there. You have to have a reason to locate. Awareness is what it's called. Having sports events on television in your city brings the greatest level of awareness you can possibly ask for. In the case of hosting a Super Bowl, that's the equivalent of $25 million in free ad spend. Money that you don't have to spend to get the attention. Think about what that breaks down to on a per home game basis. My estimate's about $7 million per, okay? And for Major League Baseball, somewhat less per game, but there are 82 games total, half of those at home. So you've got 82 games total at home, all right? So you've got, and of course, there's basketball. Oakland lost all of that. And it's threatening to lose the A's part. If you would say, well, no one goes to the A's games, I agree with you. But I'm going to let you know a dirty little secret. Fans not going to games is not as important as the games being on television, because television drives sponsor revenue. All right, as long as you have the game going on, that's more than half the battle. You can figure out how to get the fans back. But television, from the city's perspective in terms of economic development, is golden. And there are studies now to back that, to back it. Oakland has failed at implementing the key economic driver to its success. Large-scale events, sports, concerts. Oakland could produce its own events with all the great people that have come from Oakland. Mark Curry, Tom Hanks, Too Short. You get the idea. Zendaya, goes on and on and on. Why not an Oakland event? Use the Art and Soul Festival downtown Oakland, right, as the basis for an Oakland reunion, bringing all the Oakland greats from around the world together for 2 nights in our great city. Things like that. We reproduce it, right? And it's on television. We put it on television, on the internet. Cheaper than ever. We want to live stream it, okay? On top of a national broadcast, which if we get the right people to participate, it would be. Tom Hanks, of course. But these are the kind of efforts we need. But we don't get them because Oakland doesn't get it. And that's a double entendre deliberately. We get what we get. Okay? So Dave is literally buying time. What is he buying time for? I think he's buying time for the governor of Nevada to come around and negotiate a better public financing deal. I know for a fact right now that there are people in Las Vegas who are wondering what the A's are going to do next. And these are key people. And I know because they ask me, and we trade information. But what the Athletics are doing is they're trying to quite literally play out the string in Oakland before they cut loose. And it's smart because they don't want to be in a situation where if they do make such a dramatic alteration in where they are located, that they didn't give Oakland every chance in the world to make this happen. And hey, who knows, okay? This could move forward if the city has the right group of people behind it. But right now, look, the mayor hasn't even put together a group of businesses to be advocates for Oakland and the athletics, to help the process along, to be there as potential sponsors for the stadium. We used to do things like that decades ago. And the internet allows us to see what we used to do, to learn about organizations like Celebrate Oakland. And Libby, of all people, someone who born and bred in Oakland, has been involved in major city initiatives, been a council member, been on the nonprofit board, started a nonprofit. I helped her out with Oakland Cares on her and her mother. That was way back in 1993. Okay? They know. Libby knows. So why didn't she do it? And why hasn't she done it? You know? So I've already given you more than you're going to get from the Wall Street Journal. You're going to get the usual quotes, because then people say, well, I'm a journalist. I have to, it's who I talk to. Well, you know what? I'll be 60 this year. I can remember a time when journalists actually knew how to do calculations, and they turned to specialists turned to specialists like myself. They used to do that. Even turn to me, say, hey, Zenny, what do you think about this? You work for the mayor, you did tax increment financing. What do you think, right? Not anymore, because they have their own funny little attitudes about me, which come off to me as being racist. But I digress. Can we get this done? We can get this done. But the mayor has to establish a real project lead and stop making herself the spokesperson, because she says the wrong thing a lot. Libby is determined to prove that she gets it, she's the messenger, it's hers. And she might think it's something that Jerry Brown, her mentor, did, but Jerry was a celebrity, okay? Jerry could get away with things that Libby can't get away with. And she's fashioned herself into a celebrity, yes, but not for the right reasons. And so Jerry had a persona that was separate from how he ran government. And I'm not saying he didn't run it well. He did. But my point is, as I said, I remember I said to her on a matter I'm not going to reveal, way back in November, after just a couple weeks after she got elected. And I said to her, did we elect you or did we elect Jerry Brown? You elected me. I said, well, then you're going to have to be your own person. Okay? You can't be mayor of Oakland for Jerry. Jerry had his time. This is your time. It's her time to shine, because her clock is running out. And I know she gets that, but she insists on doing it her way, even when her way is not working. That's how stubborn she can be. She doesn't understand how to pivot. So if you would say, why does it have to be all on the mayor? It's because of the strong mayor system that we set up. That's why. Her chief administrative officer, I like Ed Reskin personally. I've known Ed for a long time. We're not buddy-buddy. Both Cal guys. But DCRP, Department of City and Regional Planning. But Ed, the fact of the matter is that Ed has been a transportation guy. He is not a redevelopment guy. And that's why Libby held him in the back burner for so long, not allowing him to have the public face. But even then, project manager Molly Mabern, she didn't put Molly out there either. Molly made a lot of mistakes herself. And they hired consultants that didn't know what they were doing. Like Century Urban put out a tax increment revenue calculation that was so bad it almost made me upchuck. I think one day I did. Anyway, you say, why was it bad, Zenny? Because it among other things, the law says that you can use 45 years to float a bond issue for your redevelopment project. The law is Enhanced Industrial Financing District legislation in California, okay? But do you know what Century Urban did? They released a calculation that was only 20 years of the 45. I caught it. I blogged about it. I vlogged about it. I hit the ceiling. I said, this isn't all the money available. So you're going to have us establish a tax increment financing district and not use the whole damn bond issue years that are available? That's stupid. That's literally, folks, leaving money on the table. And yet they put this in a freaking paragraph, left it there, and the city didn't even see it because people didn't know what they were looking at. It was their own consultants doing it. It's ridiculous. And it's the high watermark example of the incompetence that has been allowed to rule how Howard Terminal has not been implemented to this date. And the Oakland Athletics didn't know it either. You know who pointed all this stuff out to them? Me. And then someone else would go and take what I told, and they would go back and say to Dave, oh yeah, and they would regurgitate the problem. And then Dave would come back to me in an interview and say, oh yeah, well, other people have said that. And I would track back and say, yeah, but actually I was the first to say it like almost about a year ago. Okay? See, people, rather than just getting the best and the brightest to do their work, they only want certain kinds of people to do it. I'm telling you, that's why we're in trouble with this project. Okay? That's why. So there you go. You have 42 minutes and 11 seconds of information that you will not see in the Wall Street Journal. And guess what? You didn't even have to pay a paywall. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube, and please bookmark oaklandnewsnowblog.com, and I'll be back with more.